Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Lena Wilson. I'm the Chief Executive of Scottish Enterprise, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to Scotland and to Edinburgh for our third annual Low Carbon Investment Conference. Over the next few days, it's a packed agenda. We're going to be celebrating some of Scotland's successes, recent successes, as we've seen in the footage, in terms of growing renewables and our low-carbon technology sectors. But I think more importantly, we all have an opportunity to get to the heart of what lies between Scotland and those ambitions in terms of low carbon and what we collectively can do to help realise those. The transition to a low carbon economy is now firmly established as a strategic priority for Scotland, and we are making real progress. But let's not kid ourselves, we still have a long way to go if we're going to capture all of the economic environmental benefits beyond the low-hanging fruit. Scotland's groundbreaking Climate Change Act and stretching targets for reducing carbon emissions, that's 42% by 2020, and as you all know, 80% by 2050. And we know that if we can deliver this level and pace of carbon emission reduction, Scotland will play a small part in helping the world's global average temperature reduce. Now, I use the word small deliberately, as we know that a country the size of Scotland can't have the transformational impact on the Earth's temperature that's needed. But that doesn't mean that we can't be ambitious and lead from the front and be a terrific example to others around the world with those stretching targets. Despite our size, we are incredibly globally ambitious. Gandhi was quoted as saying that a small body of determined spirits fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission can alter the course of history. And the low-carbon transition in an economic context is what really excites me. That win-win solution is to use Scotland's stretching targets to make sure we adapt quicker than our competitors. We develop lower carbon products, services and technologies that serve global markets and that we get the economic return from. So what about that global picture? Well, over the next couple of days, we are going to hear plenty of debate, insights and bang-up-to-date facts, statistics and figures from many leading industry experts and commentators joining us this year. But there are a few examples of that really resonate with me. Global investment in renewable power and fuels increased by 17% in 2011 to a new record of $257 billion. That's nearly twice the level of investment compared to 5 years ago in 2007. And I think that considering worldwide economic trends in recent years, that statement alone gives us absolute affirmation of the direction of travel in a global scale. An estimated 5 million people, just about the population of Scotland, work in renewable energy industries around the world. And the latest International Business Report indicates that almost 70% of clean tech businesses expect to increase their revenues over the coming year and are continuing to invest in the long-term growth, with more than half expecting to increase their spend on R&D. So that's the global picture. What about Scotland? Well, closer to home, renewable energy amounted to around 35% of Scottish consumption last year. And over half the UK's onshore wind installed capacity now comes from Scotland. And since 2009, Scotland's renewables industry has delivered capital investment of around £2.8 billion. Over the past year, as the film showed, we've made very significant progress in attracting major inward investors, driving innovation and reducing the cost of energy, and laying the foundations for developing a renewable sector that does truly compete on a global scale. We have a number of world firsts in Scotland, including the world's first deep-water offshore wind farm, the world's first grid-connected accredited test facility for wave and tidal devices and technologies. And here today, we are familiar with Scotland's natural competitive advantages: a quarter of Europe's tidal resource, a quarter of its wind potential, and 10% of Europe's waves resource. That natural resource is absolutely fundamental in our efforts to meet our target to generate the equivalent of 100% of our own electricity demand from renewables by 2020. And we believe that Scotland's offshore wind industry alone will deliver up to 28,000 jobs by 2020 and contribute over £7 billion of investment to the economy. And we are well on our way to achieving that. Scotland's unstinting focus on developing a world-class renewable energy sector is very well recognised, and our successes in attracting mobile investment projects is one of the most significant achievements since last year's conference. Renewable energy is the fastest growing sector for global foreign direct investment and was the leading sector for capital expenditure in Europe in 2011. Our natural competitive advantage, proven track record and winning business environment has helped us attract companies, as we saw in the film, like Samsung and Gamesa, as well as the headquarters of the Green Investment Bank, and for the offshore renewable energy catapult in Glasgow. In fact, the latest Ernst & Young UK Attractiveness Survey and European Investment Monitor reinforces this by underlining our strong inward investment performance and revealing that the UK is Europe's leading destination for foreign direct investment and job creation, with Scotland the top performing region, even higher than London. In addition, Edinburgh, home to the Green Investment Bank headquarters, was ranked as the best small European city for foreign direct investment in FDI's European Cities and Regions of the Future 2012-13 awards. So clearly we are more than holding our own. We are punching above our weight in terms of attracting talent and investment. And importantly, we're incredibly outward-looking. This is about, the world looking in on Scotland and keeping a close eye on what's happening in our competitor areas. Talking about keeping our eye on the ball, we're also looking to developing economies. The real bright spots for foreign direct investment in recent years include some of those developing countries, such as Africa and Latin America, with Brazil, for example, which has achieved 40% growth in the last year. Developing economies made up 35% of that $257 billion global investment that I mentioned earlier, and that is clearly growing. So it's no coincidence that we are focusing more of our international efforts in these developing areas, and we've opened new SDI offices in Brazil, and we will be doing so in West Africa, to name but a few. If we're to make the most of our early mover advantages in sectors like offshore renewables, then we have to continue to be a step ahead. I think that's some of the competition buzzing in to see how I'm doing. There's a fly on the microphone in case you haven't noticed. We have to continue looking at developing economies that are achieving significant growth and ensuring we have a presence that can support Scottish businesses with export potential and ensure that we've got the right networks to win and sustain foreign investment in what's going to be a very difficult climate ahead. So we continue to hear of the constraints on the renewables and clean tech sectors, many of which are constraints one would expect in an emerging and diverse sector. The challenges around regulatory and policy issues, obviously, the fly absolutely likes me. We'll shoot it for you, for First Minister, when you come on. Don't worry, there'll be no fly here. The challenges around the regulatory and policy issues, the lack of finance, the lack of skilled workers and gaps in the supply chain since last year, we've seen a great deal of movement in many of these. New financial mechanisms and entrance to the investment landscape for renewables and the clean tech, including pension funds and ethical banking investors. We've had new funds and innovation, such as Powers, as we saw, our prototype offshore wind energy renewable support, and our various funding calls and grant schemes like Waters and Waters 2. And we have plans to maximise benefits from the £103 million fossil fuel levy money that will leverage greater investment from the private sector into key areas of Scotland's renewables industry. We can continue to see further development of the supply chain with existing players like Bifab continue to attract sizeable contracts and new entrants moving ably into the renewable sector. And in skills development, as we saw in the film, players like Steel Engineering launching their fantastic Renewable Energy Skills Academy to make sure there's a fresh supply of our engineering talent. The challenge now is to mobilise our unemployed young people to go into that sector, to think about engineering and our school leavers so that we've got a fantastic supply of talent. We've also seen some movement around policy, such as the Renewables Obligation Banding Review, Project Transmit, and the Draft Energy Bill with its electricity market reform proposals. Now, tomorrow's International Question Time promises to raise some interesting discussion and debate about what now needs to happen in this space to deliver the right regulatory environment to allow the sector to flourish. And I'm determined to do all that I can through Scottish Enterprise to highlight the huge economic prize to policymakers. So Scotland is making good progress in developing a leading renewable energy industry. But what about the wider low-carbon economy? Our well-documented success in renewables aside, many other industries are now focusing on emerging low-carbon market opportunities and resource efficiency. Our food and drink sector, for example, with players like Diageo, now looking seriously at water, waste, energy efficiencies and sustainable packaging. Our paper-making industry is waking up to the potential of combined heat and power, with Tullows Russell and Fife, for example, investing £200 million in a state-of-the-art biomass plant. And of course, our transport industries are increasingly looking at new innovative transport initiatives and solutions, with leading organisations like First and CalMac developing new hydrogen buses and hybrid ferries. But where do we go from here? We're just at the start of the country's low-carbon transition. How should our economy evolve and allow us to achieve maximum economic and environmental potential and impact in the context of such stubborn economic challenges at the moment? At Scottish Enterprise, I want to be clear in terms of our role. Our role is to stimulate economic growth whilst trying to help balance the environmental impact. And we're focused on helping to expedite Scotland's progress towards a low-carbon economy by driving innovation, investment and the adoption and uptake of resource efficiency, cost reduction and measures in terms of products and services. So never one for shying away from the challenge and competing interests to achieve a healthy, wealthy and sustainable Scotland. I do find myself looking at where we find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. We will continue to be faced with implications achieving our low-carbon ambitions against a backdrop of continued low growth. And also we have faced that in terms of the growth of the highly energy-intensive industries such as oil and gas and chemicals, clearly some of Scotland's major current exporter and economic contributors, and we should all acknowledge that. But if Scotland is to meet its climate change targets, then we need to push the boundaries and look for innovative solutions that will help us reduce at an absolute level emissions while also achieving GDP growth. In terms of consumption emissions, only Sweden amongst OECD nations has ever managed to achieve this level of reduction and growth. And whilst we have certainly made real progress in reducing our domestic emissions, we all have to make much more aggressive cuts in energy, water and in raw material consumption, drive down waste and encourage much greater innovation in technology. And that's no mean feat. Quite simply, beyond our renewable energy potential and competitive advantage, we must make smarter decisions around our take, make and dispose economic culture. Many companies around the world have now adopted this notion of the circular economic principles. Michelin, for example, pay per kilometre for tyres. Caterpillar now have a remanufacturing division. And Minetti has transformed from prime manufacturers of coat hangers to an industry-leading recycler, with 2/3 of its output now solely from recycled processes. We're now working with the MacArthur Foundation to promote this notion of the circular economy among Scottish businesses. And we're starting the application of that concept to the medical devices sector, which has been recognised as one of those higher potential sectors. So, in conclusion, over the next 2 days, we have an opportunity to step it up a gear again, to really get to the heart of where the barriers are, how we collectively can address them, and how we can make further progress in our international low-carbon ambitions. We'll be crossing continents, looking at opportunities and learning for as far as the Middle East, South America and the Far East, with keynote speakers and participants including Ron Heisler from Masdar, Akio Fukui from Mitsubishi Power Systems, Javier Perea of Gamesa, and of course Scotland's low-carbon champion, our First Minister Alex Salmond. We have the opportunity to join these trailblazers from renewable and clean tech sectors with key policymakers and leading finance players. And I hope that we each take every single opportunity we have to discuss this, to collaborate and to innovate with solutions to those barriers. So, to talk you through what's happening globally in our clean tech investment in more detail, I'm absolutely delighted again to introduce Angus McCrone of Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Angus.